I've owned the HomePod since Black Friday of 2018, and up until this point I haven't really talked about it in depth on this channel. Maybe I was afraid to talk about it, or maybe it's not compelling enough to talk about. But we'll find out today in another super cool review. So those of you not familiar with the HomePod, it released last year, about February of 2018. It was Apple's solution to the smart home speaker. So we're going to take an in-depth look at it today. And let's start with the appearance. Now I think that the HomePod looks pretty good. Apple really took a non-offensive approach, and by that I mean they really tried to make it fit into any living room, like a lot of the smart speakers that I talked about. They all kind of take that non-offensive approach where it's not going to be like some laser light show that's kind of grabbing all the attention. It's really meant to kind of blend into the background, but it can still kind of be a statement piece all its own. The two colors that this is available in is black and white. I obviously went with the black one. The white one's pretty nice. Like I said, it's not a bad design. Personally, I prefer the Amazon Echo's fabric look or even the Google Home's look, and that might be because there are more color options. They're more customizable. Like for instance, the Amazon Echo even has the wood finish. But I don't think any of them look bad in this category. It's really going to come down to personal preference. Like I said, I prefer the Echo, but I still think the HomePod looks outstanding. Let's get into compatibility. So let's get this straight up front. The HomePod is an Apple-only device, so you must live in the Apple ecosystem to be able to use it. There's really no way to get around that. You have to have either an iPad or an iPhone to even set it up. Speaking of the setup, it's pretty simple. You plug it in, it pops up kind of like if you pair AirPods or something like that to your phone, and then you tap connect and it walks you through the setup. So that part of it's pretty simple. But compatibility wise, you're looking at AirPlay 2. Of course, you have Siri built in as the assistant to do your HomeKit stuff like control your lights or play music from Apple Music. AirPlay 2 does work with pretty much every Apple device. Like you can cast stuff from your Apple TV, or if you have a MacBook or an iMac or an iPad, pretty much anything that supports AirPlay 2, Apple device-wise, can cast audio directly to the HomePod. But it doesn't offer anything like Bluetooth or an auxiliary jack, so you can plug in a third-party device or connect a third-party device to play music out of it. So that's why I said earlier that this is pretty much an Apple-only device. Another important thing with the HomePod is the sound quality, because Apple touted this device as being a speaker first and everything else second. The big claim with the HomePod was it uses these multi-directional speakers that bounces the sound off the wall to create a full room sound, and you can place it anywhere in the room, and using software it would automatically reconfigure itself so it would sound consistent. I don't know how true that is. I have moved the HomePod around quite a bit, and to me it sounds exactly the same when I had it over here versus over there. I'm not an audiophile, so I can't say for sure, but to me it sounds like the claim is mostly true. The only time I did notice a difference, for instance, if I go out of this room directly into the kitchen, if I have it over here, it does sound more clear because my kitchen's over here. It goes straight back like this, versus when it was on this side of the room, since there's walls back in the kitchen, I couldn't hear it as well in the kitchen. So I would say in the living room itself, it sounded the same, but when I went into a different room, even though it's kind of an open floor plan here, it did sound a little bit different, or it didn't sound as clear. Speaking of clarity, overall, like, this device sounds very clear. When listening to music and listening to podcasts, like, it's pretty much, I wouldn't say that it's unmatched because I do have a really good surround sound system here, but I don't mind listening to music on this over my surround sound system just because it's so clear and the bass is clear. It's not overpowering. It has a good thump to it. I wouldn't say that it's the most bass heavy device, but in my opinion, it sounds pretty darn good no matter what genre you listen to. In fact, let's have a quick listen of a couple of different songs just to kind of see how it compares. So I think audio quality wise, I feel like it lives up to the promise. I was not disappointed by the audio quality of the HomePod. So the next thing I want to talk about is functionality. So let's get right into it. Coming off of how great the sound quality is, you are pretty much only getting that sound quality through Apple Music, at least if you're playing music from the speaker directly. Now, if you're casting the music with AirPlay 2 from a phone or an iPad or another Apple device, you can play whatever you want to, like Spotify or Pandora, wherever you have your music, whatever you're playing your music through. But using the built-in voice controls, you can only play music from Apple Music, which is a severe limitation of this speaker. When you look at a speaker, for instance, like the Amazon Echo has built-in support for multiple services. Of course, they have their own Amazon Music service, but they also support Spotify, Pandora, and even Apple Music, which was not a thing when I first bought the HomePod. And then you have to look at the Google Home as well. While Google Home doesn't support Apple Music, it does have support for their music service, Google Music, and then of course YouTube Music, Spotify, and Pandora. So the fact that the HomePod kind of limits you to just Apple Music, like I said, it is an Apple-only device, but there are a lot of people that are in the Apple ecosystem that still use Spotify and other services. Apple needs to give an option to change the default music program. Because if you don't have an Apple Music subscription, it's pretty much useless. Alright, so music isn't the only thing that the HomePod is competing against compatibility-wise with other smart speakers like the Amazon Echo or the Google Home. It's also trying to be that controller for your smart home hub. So to really understand that, you have to understand the basis of what the HomePod is using for that technology. It's using HomeKit, something that's been built into the iPhone for a while now, even before the HomePod came out. So Apple started building the HomeKit service way before the HomePod came out, but it never quite got there. It's not nearly as compatible with as many devices as the Amazon Echo, which is definitely first as far as how many devices are compatible, and then you have Google Home, and then way down at the bottom is HomeKit. So that severely limited the HomePod from day one. So it's not really the HomePod's fault, it's more so a failure of HomeKit, but since I've had this in my living room, I've also had to keep an Echo close by to really control everything. Now, there are a lot of popular devices that work with it. For instance, it supports the August Smart Lock, which I have, the Ecobee 4, or all the Ecobee thermostats pretty much, all the current ones, and of course the Hue lights. So those are some major ones that it does support. But there are other things in my house, for instance, like it doesn't really support many security systems. It has one that's supported right now. I have the Ring security system, which is owned by Amazon, so I don't really expect Apple to support that. But they did add Apple Music support to the Echo, so it could happen, but I can understand that being omitted. I also have my Roomba that I can't control with this, and I have my Logitech Harmony Hub, which is probably the biggest thing for me that was a deal breaker as far as having this be the only device in my living room, smart home device. I mean, and ironically, I keep the Logitech remote right beside the HomePod just to remind it that they don't work together. So Apple's just been very slow to adopt compatibility for HomeKit, and unfortunately that really impacted the HomePod after it launched. And then speaking of the slow adoption rate, while Apple's busy playing catch up, Google and Amazon are both going into their video assistants, and they're now building that side of the ecosystem, especially with Amazon just launching their $90 Echo Show 5, that now with a screen for $90 can do a lot more than what the HomePod can do. The only thing the HomePod wins in is sound quality, and it does have really good hardware. The things that it does work with, it works really fast. It's only a few seconds faster, but it does make a difference, especially when you use these devices all the time. So for instance, here's a quick demonstration of me turning the lights off and on with the HomePod and with the Echo. Hey Siri, turn on the living room lights. Hey Siri, turn off the living room lights. Alexa, turn on the living room lights. Alexa, turn off the living room lights. So like I said, it's a few seconds faster, but when you get used to using these devices every day, that few seconds does make a big difference. So the last thing I want to talk about as far as functionality is the functionality with the iPhone, specifically placing phone calls and checking your messages. So it works okay for checking your messages. The phone call thing is pretty cool, like they have a big speakerphone, but unfortunately we haven't used it since the first week that we've owned the device, and that's because of privacy. So when you link this device with your iOS account, it links it to the one account, so you can only check text messages from the one user, and there's no kind of voice authentication. So anybody in the room can say, check my text messages, and it's just going to read the text messages out loud. Or if you get a phone call and it goes to the HomePod, anybody in the room can answer that phone call. So for that reason, we had to go ahead and disable the feature, which really sucks because that would have been a cool feature to have, to be able to, I'm in the living room, I'm just going to place a call from the HomePod, but now we can't really use it, at least until Apple releases their multi-user support, which they announced earlier this year. So hopefully that will remedy some of these issues. The Google Home's had multi-user support for a long time using voice recognition, and it works pretty well. So to me, there's not any excuses of why they can't do it, because I know hardware-wise this is a lot better than what Google Home offers. So the next thing I want to talk about is the value. Now, the HomePod launched at $350, a premium that Apple thought was worth paying for the superior audio quality and being the only Apple Music device and the multi-room, blah, 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 whatever. For some reason, they thought that that was a good price. But since then, the Google Home Max has come out. Amazon has released the Amazon Sub that lets you pair two speakers together with a subwoofer to give you basically like a mini stereo system with the Amazon devices. And then on top of that, you have the Sonos One, which is $200, and that offers AirPlay 2, so you can cast stuff from your Apple devices. And if you get the one that has Alexa built in, then you can play Apple Music directly with your voice. So since then, the HomePod has gone down MSRP-wise to $300. When I got this on Black Friday, I spent $230 on it. It was on sale last year on Black Friday for $250, and then I ended up buying the open box one at Best Buy, so there was a little bit of a discount. Recently, it has been on sale for $200 at Target. But the thing is, it's really hard to recommend because at $200, the Sonos One is also $200. And with that, if you really want like great sound quality, and then you want a great built-in assistant, and you still want to be able to do the AirPlay stuff, you can do all of that. So Sonos is really offering the same stuff that the HomePod is able to do, but at a lower price technically, because even though it was $200, right now the MSRP is still $300. So it's really hard to recommend even at $200, especially at $300. Like it's for a very specific user. Like you have to be in the Apple ecosystem. Like all your devices have to be Apple. You have to use Apple Music. You have to have certain smart home equipment that's compatible with this. And all those limitations just add up. And I can't even think of a price point in which I would even recommend buying this at until Apple fixes some of these issues. So in conclusion, I can't really recommend the HomePod to anybody unless it was really cheap and Apple adds some more built-in support for music services, since they don't have any other way to really connect third-party devices to it. Like, add support for Spotify and Pandora directly with voice. Maybe at that point I could recommend it, but even then, it's still, like, you can get a first-generation Sonos for even cheaper than $150. And I don't know how the sound quality compares. That's going to be subjective anyway. So if you have a chance to listen to both, if you're really banking on sound quality, this is really good. So maybe it's worth it to you to get this over a Sonos. But when you take into account that you can play Apple Music on the Sonos, it has AirPlay 2 so you can cast stuff, and it has the Echo built in if you get that version of it, which you should if you want to do anything Apple Music related. With the Echo, you pretty much have access to every smart home device that supports a smart speaker, because the Echo is kind of the standard right now. And then of course in a close second would be the Google Home. And another thing that's really changed since the HomePod came out was this was the only speaker that you could play Apple Music on. But Apple started to make this transition to being more of a service-based company, and since then they've added obviously Apple Music support to the Echo, and then they're also bringing AirPlay 2 to a lot of TVs. So that really diminishes the value of this. So now you're not really getting like, oh, this is the only device that can do this. And it's not. And it's not even the best at doing what it does. So unless Apple makes some drastic improvements, I just don't recommend buying it. Like there's not really a price point that I can think of where I can say, yeah, this would be worth it, unless it was under $100, which would be insane, and that probably will never happen. But I don't recommend it. I would recommend looking into the Sonos, or heck, you can get an Echo Dot for $50 and under, a lot of the times under, and you can connect external speakers to it. Like you could spend the $300 for this, getting an Echo Dot, and then you would have $250 just to spend on your speaker setup and get good audio quality that way. And then you still have Apple Music. You won't have AirPlay 2. That's going to depend on what you want. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, and subscribe, and always do at least 2 things at the same time. Peace.